For the last couple of years, the co-op shooter genre has been on a steady decline, with 2021 being one of the worst years for it entirely, with games like Back 4 Blood being one of the most clunky, unoriginal, uninspired shooter games I have played on a long time. So imagine the expression I made when I received my beta key for Darktide, a game that I have been anxiously waiting for over 2 years. But before we begin, I'm doing a giveaway for this game. To enter the giveaway, all you gotta do is like this video and leave a comment saying something like, I want Darktide. Also, special thanks to Grayson West for becoming a Patreon. Thank you. Also use code MIDNIGHT on GamerSubs. Thank you too. Also click the bell to get all notifications on future videos. From the creators of Vermintide 2, Darktide is a visceral 4-player co-op action shooter game set on the planet Atoma Prime in the hive city of Tertium, where you, a criminal with nothing else to lose, an outcast, is sent by the Inquisition to investigate the possible infiltration of the forces of chaos.
You take me to him! Take me to the son of a bitch!
One of the first things that you will notice when booting up Darktide are the stupidly long loading screens. Also how the game approaches and respects the lore of the 40k verse, and how it implements it onto various of its mechanics, like being able to give your character its whole backstory and why he was chosen for this particular task.
My weapon is empty!
You can choose 1 out of 4 classes: Veteran Sharpshooter, Zealot Preacher, Psyker Psychonetic, and Best Husbandu, Ogryn Skullbreaker. And they all have unique weapons and abilities for each class. Veteran Sharpshooter is able to enhance the damage he deals from range for 4 seconds, making him able to kill special or elite enemies in seconds, perfect to score those really crucial kills. Or something like Ogryn's ability where he dashes onto a crowd and stuns them for some time. Sounds really cool, but the character customization is definitely on par with your typical middle school cafeteria menu. It is bare bones to say the least, and it is definitely not up to AAA standards. You can't actually personalize your character as you want, and you are stuck with the few presets the game offers. Yet, this is one of the most Warhammer games out of all of the Warhammer games in existence.
Are you serious?
And surprisingly, because you're not even playing as a space marine.
Stand with your brothers!
The world of Darktide is filled with a grim and dark personality. From the hallways you go through to the skyboxes you have the pleasure of watching. The world Fat Shark developed in Darktide is absolutely astounding. You just feel that this hive city is actually alive, and no wonder, Wig the Machine Spirit is right there on the title screen.
Sound off! Where are you?
But do not let the beauty of this world take you out from the fact that you are in the grim darkness of the far future. Every corner of this city is extremely hostile, and the game lets you know that extremely quick. Also, you are not controlling some 8-foot monster like a space marine, but a weak, frail, fragile human that can die in an instant if you are not careful. And that's the thing that excited me the most when Darktide was announced 2 years ago. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have never played as a normal human being on any 40k game, and 40k games have been developed since 1992, at least on the shooter side of things. So finally being able to see how a human would react to these monstrosities just captivates me a fucking ton. But anyways, let's talk about the gameplay. Yes, indeed, Darktide is definitely a 40k game, and by that I mean that it's a clunky, buggy mess. In the email I received from Fat Shark, they did state that this build had a lot of bugs, but some of the things I disliked about the gameplay are there by design. Like, there's no player collision between you and your teammates. The number of times I got hit through my friends is just stupid. Also, every time you get hit, your character will do this stupid staggering animation. that completely stops your momentum, meaning that if there's more than 2 enemies hitting you at the same time while escaping, you are gonna get stuck.
Los netos son un vergo. Vas a terminar igual que yo.
There's also this bug where enemies are just hitting nothing, but somehow they end up hitting you instead, even if you are meters away from them, and it is extremely frustrating on higher difficulties. And it is even more frustrating when you get infinitely stunned by the armed enemies.
Ayúdame con esto, cabrón. Look.
Even on lower difficulties, these soldiers are just a pain in the dick. They have the aiming skill of a fucking Primarch, meaning that if you get outside of cover when they are around, the game turns into a frustrating, staggering, stunning mess. And that's the main thing with Darktide. If you do not play as a team, an actual unit, and communicate, you are gonna get fucked very hard. And I mean really hard. Darktide has a unique mechanic where you only recover your toughness or shield when being in close proximity with your teammates. So if you are one of those imbeciles that go solo, al chile wey estás bien pendejo. If you are alone, your shield won't recharge and it will exponentially recharge with the more teammates you have around. So stick with your teammates, please. The number of times someone just decided to go alone and got himself killed was staggering.
Follow me!
Going back to these bastards, Darktide might feel like a first-person shooter, but I find myself using the melee weapon more than anything else, and no wonder. Your melee weapon is your best friend. Cherish it, respect it, and definitely love it, because this thing can get you out of the most ridiculously impossible situations. You can charge your attacks for a heavy hit, block incoming attacks and set up a counter, or you can push several enemies to get some breathing room at the same time. When things get up close and personal, and they will, these 4 mechanics are what are going to save you and your teammates' lives. There's also a unique mechanic that I have never seen any game implemented like Darktide does. You can dash left, right, and backwards to dodge enemies. Thing is that your dash is tied with your jump button, meaning that you cannot dash forward. If you do, you will jump, and you cannot jump sideways or backwards. If you do, you will dash. Dashing is extremely important for you and your team's survival. Add in some quick melee strikes and combos and you are a force to be reckoned with. Darktide gives you the freedom on how to tackle the raids, the missions, the strikes. If you want to, you can go full psychers, full zealots, full ogrins and whatever, but the game definitely feels like it punishes unbalanced teams. By my experience with the game, sharpshooters are a must for dealing with the crazy aimbotting pieces of shit, and ogrins are a must for crowd control. In the games where we didn't have a sharpshooter, it definitely felt extremely unfair how we didn't have anything to deal with those bastards, and if there's not an ogrin there to have your back, you are definitely gonna get squashed by the stupid amounts of enemies this game can throw at you. And that's another thing I like. In the lore, Atoma Prime houses a total of 90 billion human souls. Believe that. And you can see that number reflected in the amount of shit Darktide throws your way. It is horde after horde after horde, and it doesn't seem to stop. You do have your quiet moments here and there to relax, but they are not scripted. Each raid is going to be completely randomized, for the exception of key things and objectives you have to complete through each mission. It reminds me a lot of the director from Left 4 Dead, and no wonder. The game's soundtrack is your typical 40k game soundtrack. Ammunition in the very nick of time. and it just fits the combat so much. It's like an inspiring, dreadful melody. It knows you are going to die, but it's for the Emperor, so go for it, boy.
Stop them, whatever it takes!
Because the game is always throwing you hundreds of enemies at the same time, it does feel like your melee weapon is your primary and your gun is used for the occasional encounter. It doesn't matter how many times I tried to fend off a horde, once it became CQB, it's melee only, baby. And that's how you can see the DNA of Vermintide on Darktide, where melee is one of the primary ways of getting from point A to point B safely. I'm not saying that using a gun is redundant, but it definitely felt that I was using my melee weapon for most of the raid every single time. But maybe that's just the beta having a total of 2 guns to choose per class, so maybe the full game will feel more fleshed out on that regard. For the 20 or so hours I played in total, I only managed to play as a veteran sharpshooter and Ogren Skullbreaker. Why? Because I am a fucking idiot, with veteran sharpshooter being my main. I must say, the last gun is a piece of shit, absolute garbage. And the shotgun most likely had the Emperor's divine blessing. This thing is just overpowered as balls, one-shotting or two-shotting most enemies even from stupid range.
Marcelo!
I really hope Fat Shark doesn't nerf the shotgun, because it is extremely good for basically anything you are doing in the game. All the weapons I got to use felt heavy and impactful. A good fit for a 40k game. Of course, we couldn't end this video without talking about the special enemies and elites. I regard Left 4 Dead as one, if not the best co-op shooter game ever made for a lot of reasons. And some of them are its iconic enemies and sound cues. Darktide takes a similar approach on how it handles its special enemies, by giving each one of them its unique sound cue as to when they spawn on the level or when they are getting near your team. And let me tell you one thing, whoever designed the sound cues for the special enemies deserves a fucking raise. It's such a tiny, minute detail, but it's really important, and Darktide does it so beautifully. Each special enemy has an iconic sound that really separates them from the bunch. And they were so emblematic that now they are forever tattooed on my eardrums. When the Tox Flamer spawns, you can hear how he ignites his flamethrower.
Grenade!
I'm not gonna lie, that shit gave me nightmares.
Bastard's bleeding dead, yeah?
The Pox Burster is basically a suicide bomber, and you can hear his proximity grenade whip faster and faster the closer he gets to your team. The Pox Hound, a big as hell dog that heavily reminds me to the Hellhound from COD Zombies, does a strong howl whenever he spawns on the level, and he is basically the hunter from Left 4 Dead. And the mutant, basically the charger from Left 4 Dead, does a lot of fucking noise when he spawns. You can hear his heavy footsteps even from afar. And let me tell you, it is nightmare inducing watching a fucking mutant running from like 2 kilometers into the hive city straight into you, screaming. Each one of these sound cues are pristine clear, so unless you are not paying attention, there's just no way you're gonna jump by the special enemies. Of course, add the unending horde, and each special enemy is a big threat.
Surely the morning star is blessed by the Emperor himself.
Yes, very impressive. I took special care of the design when I started dreaming.
May it bear us swiftly into the war to come.
Why does everything hurt?
Good job, Fat Shark. I love this. Also, the Scab Sniper gave me a few heart attacks. This is the most 40k sniper I have ever seen. Overall, even after the very frustrating bugs, Darktide is shaping up to be one of my favorite shooters of 2022, and definitely one of my favorite co-op shooters overall, all thanks to its amazing atmosphere, jaw-dropping level design, responsive combat, precise controls, an amazing melee system that really feels good to execute, and meaningful special enemies. I just hope Fat Shark is able to iron out the bugs before the game releases on November the 30th. Before the game releases on the 30th of November. Thank you for watching this video. But anyways, my friends, please let me know what you think about Darktide down below. Do you like the game? Do you dislike it? Did you like the beta or not? Please let me know in the comment section. And I'll see you tomorrow on another video. Have an awesome weekend. Adios. Bye.